figuring out how to, in an embodied way, connect with the wisdom of our body, what our heart has to say, and to really transcend some of the analytical, as you said, without leaving it behind. The both and situation, not a replacement. So one of the practices that I do with my clients sometimes, because what I find is that when folks who come to coaching who are super analytical and cognitive, they come to coaching because they've reached the limit of their intellect. And they wouldn't necessarily communicate it that way, but they'll come to coaching and say, I've thought about this a million times. I'm not sure what my next move is, or something isn't right. And I've tried a bunch of things, but it's just not clicking. And what we do sometimes as a practice.
Welcome to the Daily Soul Bytes Show. I am your host, Bola, Abimbola, frequency alchemist, energy practitioner, and life coach. And this is the Daily Soul Bytes Show, where we interview guests, authors, coaches, and entrepreneurs in the fields of spirituality, psychology, and leadership to share their insights for the collection, for the expansion of collective consciousness. And today I have a returning guest, and her name is Rebecca Arnold. Welcome to the show, Rebecca.
I'm delighted to be back with you, Bola.
It's so nice to have Rebecca here. Rebecca joined us 2 weeks ago when we had the part one of Rooted Peace, a path to holistic success. And really, I wanted Rebecca to come back to talk about that difficulty that we all have as intellectuals, as those who have been conditioned to really work with the analytical part of the mind, that reptilian mind that is forever looking at how to solve solutions from the mind. And we have to slow down if we are on the spiritual awakening journey to connect with our hearts. And our hearts is really what gives us that holistic success. And I wanted us to delve deeper into that this week. So thank you for joining us again, Rebecca. So I'll ask you, Rebecca, just tell us, let me read about your bio before we start. That's the first one. So people will remember who you are. Rebecca Arnold is a professional certified executive and leadership coach. She's the founder of Root Coaching and Consulting, LLC, a holistic leadership coaching firm for ambitious professionals. She's known as a straight-talkin, big-hearted coach. Her bestseller book, The Rooted Renegade, Transform Within, Disrupt the Status Quo, and Unleash Your Legacy, shares the path to holistic success for ambitious professionals to live and live more joyfully. That is so powerful. And I do want to delve deeper into how we can claim that joy, how we can really slow down and not lose that analytical mind, but embody more of that heart space. And I would love Rebecca to share some of the things that she does with her clients who are in this space.
Thanks for that, Bola. I love this question because I do think it's the next frontier of leadership and human growth, is really figuring out how to, in an embodied way, connect with the wisdom of our body, what our heart has to say, and to really transcend some of the analytical, as you said, without leaving it behind. The both and situation, not a replacement. So one of the practices that I do with my clients sometimes, because what I find is that when folks who come to coaching who are super analytical and cognitive, they come to coaching because they've reached the limit of their intellect. And they wouldn't necessarily communicate it that way, but they'll come to coaching and say, I've thought about this a million times. I'm not sure what my next move is, or something isn't right. And I've tried a bunch of things, but it's just not clicking. And what we do sometimes as a practice is just to sit in the wanting, the yearning, the desire. And what I have seen in a lot of folks is that there's, I call it an atrophied wanting muscle. It's almost like we've been so reactive to what other people want or what the right thing to do is, that we've stopped listening inside to the messages that are coming that are quite clear often when we slow down and really listen. So I'll ask questions like, let's take a couple deep breaths and just put your hand on your heart space and notice any messages that are trying to be conveyed. or any sensations that you notice. Or I'll ask them a question like, where does your legacy live in you? And can you feel that in you? And it's not a like what the right answer is question. It's a how does my soul feel that in my body almost, which is a little bit of a tricky thing to wrap our heads around.
Mm. Oh, that's powerful. And I love the way you put, because that's the attention, placing the attention on the heart and allowing whatever comes. But there's often a resistance, isn't there, Rebecca? There is sometimes we put our hand on the heart, and because this is always a new territory sometimes. How do you guide your clients who do that and they find that they are not able to hear anything or connect with anything? Because sometimes we're really numb. The heart, a lot of the times, when we have been conditioned to focus on the mind, it's a different pathway. The heart is a different pathway. And because I have a number of folks around me who are very mind focused, very rational, and it takes a lot to come into that new pathway of the heart. So how would you guide a deeper exploration of the heart for those who are in that place?
Yeah, I so appreciate that question because so many folks have this disconnect, whether it's because of a coping mechanism or just an over-preferencing of the intellect. So this might sound a little silly, but one of the kind of gateways into this work is often just paying attention to physical signals, whatever they might be. So I'll say, what do you want to have for dinner tonight? It's just a very mundane question. And they'll answer, and I'll say, okay, how do you know that that's what you want? What are the physical sensations of wanting? And then they'll start to say like, oh, I notice like my stomach lifts a little bit, or I'll reflect to them, you've moved your posture's a little more forward now than it was before. And those are often some of the first, we start with very easy, not loaded kinds of questions. Or you're making a decision about going to a conference. How do you know you actually want to go? Think about that wanting sense and how you feel it in you. So we'll start to lay the planks of connecting physically. The heart, I find for some people is easier than other ways of connecting. And for some people, that's the hardest part. So I think because there can be so much intensity there. So for folks for whom it's harder to access the heart space, I often start with other physical sensations, or just feel your feet on the floor. What does it feel like to feel your feet on the floor? And they'll start to explain the physical sensations. And I think about some of these physical sensations are a gateway to, I think, spiritual and intuitive knowing. They're a gateway to really hearing the signals of your body instead of just papering over them and moving along. And they're the gateway to, I think, our next level in terms of our own growth and evolution.
I love that. And I know you've written a book about this, Rebecca. This is the Rooted Renegade. Do you want to talk a bit about the book as well? Because some people, I'll also share the link to the first episode here. If you could talk about, because I know the Rooted Renegade also has some very practical examples of things that can be done.
So the framework for the Rooted Renegade came out of the pandemic when I was thinking about what are people actually wanting, that deep existential yearning. What is that people are experiencing? And what I realized is that there are kind of three areas that we need to have our eye on to feel really joy and fulfillment and deep satisfaction. The first is understanding some of the physical practices to settle our nervous system. Because many of us are spun up and frenetic most of the day, and it's really hard to ask ourselves some of these deeper questions or feel the physical sensations when we're all spun up. So the first part of the book walks through a number of practices, from different breaths to visualization to gratitude practices. There's one in terms of having people connect with their body. That's just, can you feel gratitude for any body part, right? Your pinky finger, and what your pinky finger does for you, or your nose, what your nose offers, and using gratitude as a gateway into greater presence. That's all that is in the first part of the book. The second part of the book is about existential peace. How do you feel satisfied about the impact you're making and the values you're living into? And in that section, we use visualizations, we use journaling prompts, lots of different practices to unearth that. And then the third part is about creating relational peace, both with yourself and other people. How do you create a relationship with yourself and a dialogue with yourself that lifts you up instead of what many of us encounter, which is this really harsh inner monologue that takes a lot of our energy and attention. So the book is designed to combine a lot of different embodied practices with some mindset practice so that people can have various access points to this kind of work.
Oh, that's powerful. And I love the word embodiment, because sometimes we forget that the mind and the body almost operate in a separate way. Sometimes but they are together. When I say they are together, whatever we think actually transmits into some kind of energy. And it's an emotional sensation that we get within us. So, but we sometimes don't realize how connected the mind and the body is. So there's a lot of healing, just as we are working through the transformation of thoughts in the mind. We're also working through the transformation of the sensations in the body. And this is somatic. This is what somatic healing is about. It's about really transforming those sensations and those pressure points within the body. Do you do work around the body? How?
Yep.
How would you what would you suggest to those who are looking to really work through the sensation? Because it's one thing to have a calmer mind, it's another thing to have a relaxed body, because the tension, the body keeps score, as Bessel van der Heijden say. So this is so important for us to understand that yes, we can have less negative beliefs in our minds, but the body may still hold those memories. Yeah. So how do you support your clients to work through that?
So sometimes what I'll do with folks is they'll say a mindset that's really limiting in some way. Like, if I'm not working hard, I'm not worth anything, which is really like a gut punch even when I say that out loud. And I'll ask them, when you say that, what are you aware of physically? Where does that thought live in you? Which for folks who are used to being in their brain, it's a weird question. But when you say, there's an energy, as you said, of our thoughts and our words. And when we get quiet, we can feel the imprint of those beliefs in our body. So I notice even saying that out loud, I feel my stomach like sort of drop and my whole body feels heavy. So I'll have a client look at, okay, so you're saying this to yourself, 10 times a day. And every one of those times, all of those cascading physical emotions or sensations are coming with it. What's the thing you want to believe instead? So it might be, this is hard and I'm doing my best. Okay, how does that statement feel in you? And as I say that, I notice my chest kind of expanding, my stomach rising a little bit, and I feel this like almost potential up here. And so this is sort of one of the ways to connect the embodied sensations that are connected to some of our thoughts, both to recognize the negative implications of these thoughts and also the power of the positive ones. So that's just a practice. Another one might be, if someone's working on their values, maybe they are in values conflict. Okay, when you stand in your value of fairness, where do you feel that in you? And so they might say, the belief might be all people should be treated fairly. Great. Where is that in you? And they might say, my spine gets much straighter when I say that. Okay, so what if when you walked into a meeting about your DEIB initiatives in your organization, you connected with the sensation of that value of fairness? How could that meeting go a little bit differently? So that's sort of how I make the bridge for folks between that embodied practice the mindset, and then how it actually practically kind of shows up in the day to day.
I love that. I love that because this is about integration. I really I really think it's important. I love what you said about being very aware of those negative thoughts and the negative sensations, and then knowing that there is also the love within us and the higher perspectives, and that's what Daily Soul Bites is about. Daily Soul Bites really talks about the higher and the lower perspectives of self, of our thoughts, and how we can come to become much more familiar with those higher perspectives, and how we can really begin to make space for the lower perspectives, but align more and more. So it's not about invalidating the lower perspectives, it's about making space and knowing that, yes, I can have these, I can feel low, but there's also, the feeling of high that I can have, or the perspective of love and power. I'm not a victim. I don't have this learned helplessness, or I have the feelings of victimhood, and I have the feelings of learned helplessness, but I also have the feelings of power, feelings of love. It's all within me, and I can really begin to align to them. So this is what Daily Soul Bytes is really about. It's about encouraging an awareness of those different perspectives, but choosing to align. What we choose to align to is what will expand. And I'd love you to talk a bit more about your book, Rebecca, because I know that one of the things that we have to kind of work through is this resistance that doesn't allow us to even be open up to exploring. And how would you, looking at some of the things that you have shared, I know you've touched on it, but anyone watching this who is still doubting that it is possible, is it because the resistance can be very, very, the resistance could go like that, or it could take a decade.
Yeah.
This is
totally.
So for those who were on that, sitting on that fence and thinking, actually, I am not needing to connect with my heart. And there's too much benefit I have gained, too much acclaim, too much recognition I have gained from being an academic, from being a certified professional who is really very analytical, and maybe in the legal profession, for instance, which is something that because I'm a legal advisor, and I also combine that with being an energy practitioner. And I know that it was a journey getting from that place of being a leader, because that came first. And then I began to kind of delve more into my spiritual practice. And now I am a light language channel as well as an energy practitioner. And so it's always interesting, though, because I know this, I get this. I get how it can be such a challenge to leave that place of success, and what lies ahead, what kind of life or what kind of experiences lies beyond the academic success, beyond the analytical success. What can those who are still sitting on the fence begin to consider?
So I guess one thing I might offer is this framing, this either or framing that some of us have, which is like, I'm going to lose my academic success if I tap into this additional source of information, intuition, wisdom. I think it's a false belief. Like, I actually think it adds to it and offers you more. It's additive. It doesn't take away. The second thing I would say is it's very helpful to talk to your resistance. So that could be a journaling prompt, that could be recording a voice memo. And what I mean by that is, okay, you feel resistant to focusing on your heart space or doing any kind of embodied practice. Okay, resistance, what are you trying to protect me from? What do you want for me? What are you afraid I'll discover? Where is your power? Like, are you worried about losing your power? Are you trying to protect me from something? And so we can start to have a dialogue with this part of us that is resisting to understand what's going on there. So for some people, it might be, I've worked with physicians who have a lot of unprocessed grief. And for them, there's a lot of worry that if I am more empathetic in my medical practice, I might just not be able to do the things that I do every day. And there's a tension for them in, I need to be able to perform, the kind of technical pieces of my job, but I'm also feeling really flat and disconnected from my patients, and that doesn't feel good. And so there is a desire to change things, but also a fear of, what if I just can't get up and do my job every day if I feel more emotion? And so that part that would resist connecting with this part of themselves is trying to protect them from losing confidence or from getting through the day to day and having more balance. And so we can ask that part that's resistant what it needs to feel safer. So it might say things like, okay, I'll allow you in, but just for a couple minutes. And that's fine. Like, we can totally take baby steps. Or I need to understand, like, the promise. What is, this feels risky. What's in it for me? Well, what's in it for me is feeling more joyful and feeling less constrained in my life. So those are a couple of ways to kind of tussle with that resistance instead of just giving over to it. Because as you said, we could be in resistance for decades. And that's fine. Like, we'll be in our comfort zone, but we're not going to necessarily be able to integrate the joy and the possibility of passion and all of that from that place either.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rebecca. I would love you to share the cover of your book so those who would want to get that.
I'm going to have to unblur here.
I will share it. Oh, yeah, it came on for a bit.
There you go. That's beautiful. I put so much love into this book and possibility and passion. And it is a delight for me to hear about people reading it and all of the practices they're grappling with and working with to have new insights. It's really exciting.
Tadpole? Is it that tadpole? The red?
Oh, it's so funny. This is like a Rorschach. People see so many different things in it. It's a flame with roots. So the guy, I was mailing one today, and the man at the post office asked me if it was like a body part. Some people see a doll. I mean, there's all kinds of things. It's really fascinating.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me for part 2 of this, Rebecca.
It's been a delight, Bola.
And I do want to thank all our audience and listeners for joining us again today. This is the Daily Soul Bytes Show, and I invite you to subscribe. I invite you to grab a copy of Rebecca's book, The Rooted Renegade, and connect with her. If you are that person that is ready to really stop sitting on the fence about whether you are going to make do with your heart or with your mind alone, or you're ready to really integrate your heart into your day-to-day for a deeper embodiment of joy. This is so powerful. And so, yes, connect with Rebecca if this is something that you are aligning towards. And I do look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Daily Soul Bytes Show. Bye-bye.